I wanted to review some of the things that we talked about last week before we move into organization. The genealogists call, when you can't get any further, you'll hear the term brick walls. And so if you are in a situation where you've hit a brick wall and you can't go any further, I want to just remind you to check the card catalog, because that's another way of getting into information. Something may not be indexed, but it may be in a book or document that has your ancestor, and you may need to browse in it. Or you may be able to use the index of that document. So be sure and check the card catalogs. And then as you move from Ancestry and MyHeritage and Family Search, there are specific databases that may be able to answer your questions. And those are newspapers, which one of our Judy mentioned. Military databases, Fold 3, library databases, archival databases. So leave those the big four, and move into these smaller ones as you get further along the line. And then don't be shy about writing and emailing libraries and museums, because and historical societies and genealogy societies, they are there to help you and they love helping you. So write them and they may be able to give you some direction. Be sure and keep track of where you are, because if you stop at your brick wall and maybe a few months later you go back to it, you want to know where you were. So keep some kind of a log or just a piece of paper of what you've been doing, so you know what you already did. And if it really gets confusing and you really need some help, don't be shy about hiring a genealogist. They're not, I mean, they're fairly reasonable. And I have hired genealogists and had wonderful results. I've just been frustrated and I thought, oh, I don't know I need help. And I've really had good luck with that. So if that's something you want to do, email me and we can talk about that. And perhaps I can give you some suggestions. And then of course, we've got 400, 600, 1,000 other ancestors that we can research. So just put that one aside and move on. And somewhere down the road, you may have the light bulb might go off and you may be able to get back to that brick wall. Now, another person asked about mistakes in spelling or name variations. Just remember that each of these big four are indexed by different people and in different ways. They have different algorithms. So if you can't find it in Ancestry, and maybe it was misspelled when it was indexed in Ancestry, go to another database and you may be able to find it. The census, I'm thinking particularly of the census, because each of these groups index the census differently. So Ancestry may not have your person, but Family Search may. So don't give up, just move on to another database. And another person asked about the census and they couldn't find somebody in the census. I want to again remind you about Steve Morse's website. And what he does is he identifies the year of the census. And if you have the address of that family and you know they were living in that house during that year and they should be in the census, perhaps they were missed by the indexer, put in that address and he will connect you to the enumeration district. The enumeration district is the area that each census taker has. So each census taker is identified by an enumeration district. He will connect you to that district and his site will connect you to it on Ancestry or Family Search, and then you can browse the enumeration district. Let's see if I can show you how this works. Let's see. Okay, so this is what his site looks like. And he also does great things with immigration, so you might want to explore this later too. If you go down here to the US Census, you'll see 1870 to 1950 large city ED enumeration district. And you'll see how you can put in the state, the county, the town, and the street address. You click on that, he takes you to the ED number. You click on that and he takes you right to the document. Isn't that amazing? This is, he was a IT guy in Silicon Valley. He's retired and he created this amazing system. So try this out and see what you can find. Okay, so that's Steve Morse. All right. Now, 4 of you asked about health records, and I don't have a definitive answer by any means, but, and of course, it's really hard to get health information because that's so protected by privacy laws. But the death certificate does give you the cause of death, and websites will define those old medical terms. And sometimes you'll find a written code on the death certificate, which will tell you even more information on what they died of. And that maybe have some reflection on some things that they had throughout their life. So that's one way to get a sense of health information. The state archives are responsible for housing the public documents of a state. So like I shared with you last week, California Archives in Sacramento has all the documents for Agnew State Hospital, and my great-grandfather was there for a couple of months. So I was able to obtain his records and find out why he was there. It was very interesting. So Michigan, Iowa, New York, and Minnesota all have state archives. I did look at Minnesota, and Minnesota has, the way it appears on the website, temporarily stopped access to state public hospitals. I thought that was interesting. But look at those sites. I will send you the links when I do the handout, and I'll put those on the handout, and see, write them and see if they might have those public documents, because they are supposed to have any public documents put out by the state. And then to the Department of Public Health in the specific county may have something. I know they're very busy right now with COVID, but that might be something down the road. So here's a site, I'll give you the link when I send out the handout, of old diseases. And I think you'll find this interesting, like bad blood is syphilis, camp fever is typhus, canker rash is scarlet fever. So these will be on the old death certificates, and they may give you some insights into the health of your ancestors. And then there is another site on secret codes on death certificates, and it can tell you how your ancestors died. So I hope that's helpful. I'm sorry I don't have a definitive answer on that. And I did look up the Michigan archives, and it says here, it says up at the top, the Archives of Michigan is responsible for preserving the records of Michigan government and other public institutions. The collections include documents, maps, photographs, and film from private individuals and organizations, but it is responsible for the public documents. So when you're looking for that, be sure and check out the archives of the state in which your ancestors lived. Okay, then another question was how you deal with European name changes. Well, you track the family in the American census and in the European census. Now, England and the British Isles, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, all have a regular census. And some European countries do as well. So if you can track it back to that original spelling or version of a name, it's not easy, particularly when it's in another language, a language you're not familiar with. A death certificate will often list the father and mother's name, and that father and mother's name may be different from your ancestors, the person who is on the death certificate. That can give you some clues. Church records, the baptismal record may have the parent's name, even if they are parents that are still over in the old country, and the baptismal record is an American record. It will still have the parents' names, so there may be that original spelling. A wedding certificate may also have the parents' names. Be sure and check passenger lists, because that may have a parent name. European church records, if you know the town or village. And connect with Facebook groups that will feature your ethnicity, because they may be able to help you in translation or finding those documents. And you, again, hire a genealogy that specializes in the family history of your ethnicity. So if you just keep tracking it back, I hear stories of people, I finally found it. And, but it is really a challenge sometimes when European names have changed. Okay, and then another, you had fabulous questions last week. You can see I really thought about all of them. There is an organization called Reclaim the Records, and there are records that have been closed and denied to us. And this nonprofit organization goes and takes these agencies to court to have those documents released, and they have been very successful. And if you go to their website, you will see the different court cases they're involved in and what they have been able to do. So this is one to watch. Recently, the United States Immigration, let's see, how is that company worded? Recently was not, U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services was charging astronomical fees, or was planning to, for immigration documents. And there's been quite an outcry about that. I mean, it went up from 200 to 400 to, I mean, it was ridiculous. A hobby genealogist is not going to spend that money to find immigration records. But that's been put on hold now, and partly because of this organization and the outcry of genealogists saying that these are public documents that we should have access to, and you shouldn't be charging $400 for them. So that's something to follow. So this is a constant back and forth with genealogists and government entities. Okay, so that's last week, and you can see we covered a lot. We really covered a lot. It was pretty exciting, actually. So let's get started. Let's deal with organization. You've been researching, you've been staying up till 1 or 2 at night, and you got a lot of stuff, and you want to keep it in some kind of order so you can get back to it again. So today we're going to talk about some tips. Online trees, genealogy software, paper documents, the big decision. You're going to go binders or you're going to go folders, digitized records, those that are in our computer. What are we going to do with our photos? Emails. I mentioned last week that you may have emails that have family information and you want to keep them. And I want to share with you a software that has changed my life, Evernote, and just give you a taste of what that's all about. Okay, let's start with online trees. All of these, the big four, provide you with the opportunity for you to use online trees for your research. Again, using them as hints and not as the final end product, because many of them, as you're finding, are wrong. But they also give us the opportunity to put up our trees online. And it's a way of helping us organize our research. So let's start with Family Search. And let's see how this works. I showed you the page last week. If you go up to the Family Search up there at the top and scroll down to trees, you can find your family tree. And Family Search takes your family tree that you have created and combines it with all of the other family trees that have the same ancestors. So this is my family tree. I haven't put everything up there, but I put enough of critical direct ancestors that will link me with other ancestors. So you can see there's some blue things here and purple things here. They call this record hints. The blue are record hints and the red are record research hints. Red is research hints. Okay, so let's go on. If we're doing Frederica, this is my great-grandmother. Notice number 1, I'm following her. That means that whenever something new is added to our general collaborative tree, somebody else is interested in Frederica, I will get a notice on my front page, on that first page, that somebody added something to Frederica. So I chose to follow her. And I'm seeing that she has 11 sources and 1 memory. Okay, let's go into the actual family search. And I want to, let's see, I want to do Frederica again. She's up here. And I want to go into person. And this is what my family search page looks like. Now, what is really great about family search, they partner with the big four. They partner with all of these. And these are some French sites that if you have French ancestors, you might want to check these out. These are some databases. If I am in Frederica Johansdotter and I click on Ancestry, because there's a partnership, they immediately throw me into Ancestry. Isn't that great? If I click on anything else, I want to, let's see, I click on anything else, they will throw me into it. If I click on Find My Past or My Heritage, I can immediately move from one database to another because I'm in Frederica Johansdotter on my family tree. Now, you know how big I am on vital details and timelines. I'm very big on timelines. Here it is. Here's Frederica's timeline and all the people that have added things. And it's not just my things, it's what other people have added. Also, I can see the resources or the sources that people have used. And these are the people who have been adding. So these are my cousins because they too are interested in Frederica. And Julia Moore is one of my cousins. I met her through Family Search. And then I met her personally at Roots Tech. And I have had so much fun sharing information with her. So this is a great way to connect with cousins. Collaborate, and then memories. This would be pictures, but I do want to show you Frederica's brother, who is right here, Victor Johansson, has a very full family tree. He was converted by a Mormon missionary in Sweden, and the Mormon church paid for his voyage to America and his family, and he came to Utah and he settled in Utah. And as a result, his family is very large to begin with. And I want to just show his information. And I have learned so much about him from his family. He came before, wrote letters back to his sister and another brother, and then they followed. But they did not convert. Victor did. He has 32 sources. And these are, you can see there's a lot of people are adding a lot of things to him. He's got collaborations because there's a lot of action. And I learned, even when I was preparing for this today, I didn't know that his Sandgren name change, this is again a name change, the European name change we're talking about, was adopted from the state of his employer because my Frederica is Johansdotter. She did not change her name, but he changed his name. So there's another example of how that can get confusing. And then he's got all kinds of memories because this family has been very active. They've put documents up, and this is a lovely story of his daughter and her description of the trip on the ship coming across the Atlantic. Beautiful, the game she played and how she almost fell off the deck and she was grabbed by a steward. She was 9, I believe, at the time when she came. So this collaborative tree is amazing and so much help, and you learn so much from your fellow cousins. So that is an advantage of family search. So you're adding to a collaborative tree. It's not your own tree, but you can respond to something you think is a mistake. And as I mentioned last week, a lot of people have fun doing that. I mean, people are really into talking about it, discussion groups, etc. You can acquire sources, photos, and memories through this collaboration. You can connect with cousins. And because the resources are checked by participants, it's really a pretty good source for hints, and they're called record hints. That's what Family Search calls it. Okay, let's look at Ancestry and see how that works as well. Ancestry, you go into trees and you go down to public member trees, and that allows you to see what other people have out there. Now, you may go into your ancestor and you'll see 1,000 other trees that may not be right, that are, just not helpful. What I do is I roar through the first ones and I see if there's a lot of sources, if they've taken records and if they've sourced it, then I'll go into it. But if there's no records or no sources, they've copied from someone else, and that you don't waste your time with that. So if there's a lot of records, then it's worth it. Okay, here's Ancestry. I have created a number of trees. Under this trees, these are the trees I've created and the trees that I've joined other people. Some people I've asked me to be just so I could look at their trees because we have a mutual ancestor. But I have some trees that are public and I have some trees that are private. My daughter, as I mentioned, is adopted and we've been working on her tree, totally private. When I'm working on a draft that I just not sure about, private. But I have my other trees public because as they refer to this as cousin bait, because people see my trees up there and then might be interested in contacting me. So I do have those public. So there's our trees. Okay, so let's go into my Anderson family tree, which is my Frederica tree. So you can see what I have, what Ancestry's done with Frederica. And here's her tree. Oh, by the way, anybody who's living does not show up on the tree to the public. So your name's not on there, and your parents, if they're still alive, your children, it's only the deceased that are in public, even if your name occurs on the tree that you see on your account. But as far as public access, no living people. Now, what Ancestry has are the shaky leaves. You can see them here. You may have seen that on some of the programs on TV, the shaky, that's Ancestry's, one of their selling points. So let's look at Frederica here. She's got 7 ancestry hints. This is a great thing. They take your tree and anything action they see that has to do with a person on your tree, they let you know that there's a new development. Okay, so let's look at Frederica with Ancestry. Okay, here she is. Similar, very similar. We've got a timeline. Ancestry has a cute thing where they do a story of they take what you know and they put it in a story format. Actually, this one doesn't have it, but some have very interesting historical events and photographs that they've inserted into the life story, which might relate to your ancestor. I find that rather interesting. Okay, so then they've got the facts, and then they've got the hints, the shaky tree leaves, the shaky leaves. So these are my shaky leaves that have come up. And so I can look through these. Now, this is not, they're wrong here because I'm Anders Petter Anderson is her husband. So they're wrong. They blew it on that one. Here's Anders Petter, and Frederica was born in Finnerusia. So this is probably their marriage index. So I can review that. I could ignore it or I can review it. And then they show me what they have. They actually have the document. These are the Swedish church records, the enumeration records. And I can look at it. And I can look at this and I can say yes. And if I say yes, I can attach it to my tree. So I have another source, a great way to keep track of all your research. I found another source. I found their marriage record. I can now attach this to my tree and it's there and I know where to find it. Not only that, they have other records that I can look up that maybe here she is, the New York passenger. When she came into Castle Garden, Ellis Island wasn't around then. So they give me some other tips. So this is a great, shaky leaves are great, a great way to find records. Let's see, let's go back to Frederica. Okay, so we can just keep on, here's Find a Grave. This is Anders Petter. Here's her son. I know there was a Johan, and you just go through, and this is not where she was born, so this is not her. So you can just decide what you want to collect or not. That is one of the great things about the ancestry tree. It's very easy to create a tree, going back to the front page here on home. You create your tree and manage your tree. You just build on it as you do with Family Search. Or if you have a tree in another database, you can import it over and you don't have to retype everything. So that's Ancestry. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so that's that. So each of these online trees have a way of tickling you about documents that may be connected to your ancestor. Family Search has record hints, Ancestry has shaky leaves, and MyHeritage has smart matches. And here's MyHeritage, and just a quick thing on MyHeritage. Same thing, same kind of thing. This is great, remember, for the Europeans, to connect with Europeans. Here's the family tree. And here's the family tree that I have. Here's Frederica's father. And you notice the green things are smart matches. So that's to people in other trees if I want to connect with other cousins. And this is new documents. This red one is new record matches. Same process. Here is new documents that have just come up that I can look at and see. Here's again the household examination books. Fabulous records for those of you who have Swedish ancestors. And you can see that my heritage has a lot more European sources. Not all of these are available on Ancestry. So my heritage is a good one if you're looking for European connections. Okay, back to this. I get periodic updates on matches of people who are managing trees, and these are people that are my tree, and other people are researching these people. And this is what I get in my email every once in a while. They let me know, okay, somebody has just been researching somebody on your tree. You might want to look and see what they've done. And just the other day, I got an alert. I didn't have the marriage license of my grandparents. And this was so exciting. My heritage let me know that, but their link was back to Family Search. So I could have gone searching in Family Search. Great thing about Family Search, it's linked to everybody. That's the good thing. Okay, so the online family trees, the pros, and there are lots of pros. It's easy to use and it's a good place to start. It's a good place if you're just beginning this process to, if you have a subscription to MyHeritage or to Ancestry, to start to link your documents. You don't have to do a bibliographic form. You don't have to write out the source. It's all there. It's a really good place to start. It's really easy to organize your research. It's easy to put your sources in because they do it for you. It's really easy to share with family members. They don't have to be a member of Ancestry for you to share the tree with them. So if you've got it up on Ancestry, you can share that and they can see it. It's really easy to connect with new cousins who may have information. And the record hints, the shaky leaves, and the smart matches are really very helpful. And it's attractive and it's easy to use. So online trees are great. Just don't put everything up. Okay, so here's the cons. You can only access your family tree when you're on the internet. So if you're working on this someplace and you don't have internet access, you can't get into it. So all this work that you've done, you don't have access to it. Now they do have apps, the 4 of them. Find My Past also has trees. I didn't go into that. That's the English one. And if you have English ancestors, definitely check that out. They all have apps. And so you don't have internet access. You're on your phone. You can use your cell phone program to do your apps. But it's harder, we all know it's harder to use your phone to add things, but you can, so you don't totally cut off. But in terms of really working on it, if you're not on the internet, forget it. Sometimes your information may be kind of private, and yet it's an amazing story and gives you all kinds of insights into your family, and you want that in there, but you don't want to put it up on a public tree. Oh, I guess you could keep it private, but maybe you don't want to share it in that public forum. And you got to remember that these 4 companies are there to make money, except for Family Search. Family Search is not, but they're there to make money. So they want your information because the more information they have of viewers, the more they can market their company. And if you stop your subscription, you lose access to the information that you've created. Now, that's if you plan ahead and you stop your subscription, you can make what they call a GEDCOM, and I'll get to that later, where you can export your information into your software. So you don't lose it, but you got to plan. You got to plan before you stop your subscription. And that tree will remain on the site, and they would like that tree to remain on the site because they want that information to add to their information. But if you stop your subscription, you can delete it, and you move on and you're into another hobby like gardening or whatever. But you have to plan. Don't do anything without moving that information. And then you have the problem, you've done all this work and your company goes out of business and it changes the direction of its mission. And Ancestry has been sold several times since I've been involved in this, and it's changed a little bit. Ancestry will definitely be around. It's not going to go away now with DNA, but just be aware that it's up there on the internet and you don't want to lose it. Okay, so my suggestion would be, so you want to do a modified family tree. You don't have to put everything up there, just what you want, sort of ticklers. That allows you to connect with cousins, that allows you to attach documents, that allows you to share pictures or get pictures. But don't put everything up there. So, to think about it, just as you're thinking about it, think about the pros and cons. Okay, so before we move on to software, are there any questions that relate to any of the online trees?
Kathy, there's several questions, but they're not necessarily about the online trees. So I don't know if you want to carve out time and we can go through the chat questions.
Maybe we'll do that later. Yeah, we'll do that later. Okay, so let's move on to software. Okay, software. You have control. It is on your computer. You can do whatever you want with it. You can say whatever you want. It's a way to keep all of those odds and ends together in one software, and I find that incredibly helpful. You can keep track of all the details relating to a specific person, and that would be personal letters, photographs, whatever you have. You can also actually add a tape recording, an interview. You can add a movie. All of these things can be on your software and you can access them. You store your photos and your documents. You organize your research in note or narrative form. So if you want it to be a story, the story can be on your software. You can create a timeline. I'm big on timelines. And you can create all kinds of charts, all big wall charts, small wall charts, reports, websites. You can even create a book. And you can link to your sources so you know where you got things. So that's some of the advantages of genealogy software. And my guru, Lisa Louise Cook, she said on one of her podcast episodes, something happens when you physically enter your data, just like when we write down notes, they say that when you write something down, you're more apt to remember it. When you physically enter data into a database, the power of your data is revealed and there are new revelations. I think that's true. Okay, and I will put this screenshot in the handout. These are some of the software that are available. And first you have to figure out, are you a Mac user or a Windows user? So you want to get the software that works with your platform. The ones that I would recommend are Family Tree Maker, Legacy, Reunion, and Roots Magic. Family Builder is tied into MyHeritage. It's beginning, it's developing, and it probably will be great. The other two have been around a while. But Family Tree Maker is a pretty standard one, and it connects with Ancestry. And if you like this aspect, every time something at Ancestry that you've added to your online tree, it will go over to your Family Tree Maker tree on your computer. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Legacy does that with Family Search and another program, Family Tree, another website, Family Tree. Reunion does not. I use Reunion. Reunion does not sync, but I'm okay because I totally want to control what I have. I don't want things coming in from Ancestry that maybe not what I want. So I'm okay with that, but it is really a nice thing to have a connection to your online tree. And Roots Magic connects with Ancestry and Family Search. So you can see there's a variety of prices. You can see some have apps. I thought Family Tree Maker had an app, but I guess not. But the apps would be on your phone. And that's really nice because if you're in the graveyard, you don't have your computer with you, you just look on your app and see what the birth and death dates are, the names. It's really great to be anywhere. Or I'll be with a cousin and they'll say, well, now when did such and such live? I'll just pull out my phone and I'll have the answer right there. And here's the ones that have hints. You can see Family Tree Maker does hints, gets the hints from Ancestry, etc. So this is your option. Okay. So this is the way Family Tree Reunion has now gone to 13. So this is the latest one. This is the way my reunion looks. And I can change this around. I can change colors. I can do all kinds of things. But basically, the main initial thing is your couple. And these are my grandparents. And then their parents, my great-grandparents, and then their children. So this is the initial thing, the way it first appears. On the side over here, on the left sideboard, you can have a tree view. That would be like the cascading pedigree that we talked about, charts, reports. Here's you can do your research log, all kinds of things. And over here, you can search for the name and the place and other things. Okay, so that's kind of the way it looks. I can put all of my photos about my grandmother in here. They're thumbnails. My photos are in another place on my computer, but they're thumbnails, and I can do very easily a slideshow of my grandmother. I can make any kind of chart I want. I can make a short one. I can make a long one. I can change colors. I can go back, 5 generations forward 3. I just set up however I want my family tree to look. I can do a fan chart. I mean, there are dozens of charts you can do with this software. Oh, and I should say, this is Reunion, but every software has these elements. These are the standard elements that a genealogy software has. They just have them in different formats. You can see that I was in New Zealand at this time last year in Wanganui at a family reunion for my husband's family. And we were there and I put together a book of all the things that were in my software. I pressed a button and I had a book. And I had it printed with a coil spine, and I took 3 copies and I shared them with everyone, and everyone wrote notes in it and added things and made changes, and it was just great. We were on our way to Australia, and this is March 8th. By the 10th, we decided it was best to come home because we weren't sure whether we were going to get home in or not with the COVID heating up. But this was a great thing to take to this reunion. Family group sheets. These are created in your software, and these are great ways to share your research on a specific couple or person with other people. And this is the way I keep track of my research. So I put things in and it spits it out with my grandfather, my grandmother, and their children. And then I keep my notes. And again, I keep them in a timeline format because for me that works. Now this is a family that I have been researching for a long time. You can see I have 10 pages of research up there at the top, upper right. And they are a revolutionary colonial family. And I've become so attached to this family because I found so many things that have happened. But here's my family group sheet, all the kids, and here's my notes. So I have stopped at different times and gone on to research other things, but I've left my notes so I know where to pick up. And remember how I talked about last week having a research objective or a goal? Well, when I was working very seriously on this couple, my research objective was to identify the siblings and parents of Sarah Willis, wife of John Green, their birth and death dates, their married names, and the migratory patterns, how they were migrating, this family was migrating. So that was my research objective. So before I left them, I just sort of summed up what I've been working on. And I have in my notes a to-do list. When I get back to this couple again, these are some things I've got that I need to check up on. And you can see I've got a list there. I have some books I want to order through interlibrary loan. So I didn't just walk away and forget about it. I hit a brick wall. But I know I have things to do and I can come back and pursue this later. So this is the great thing about a software. All your notes, everything that you're doing, you know, the index cards we used to use in college when we were writing papers. Well, these are my index cards in a sense. I also keep track of negative searches. If I've gone through and looked at things, I don't want to look at them again. So I say, well, I've looked at these. The baptisms, they didn't have what I wanted. The marriage record on Ancestry didn't have it. So I'm not gonna look at it again, at least at this point. And then further down, that last was Daniel. Now we've got Molly Perrine, his wife. Again, I try and keep it in the historical context. The Declaration of Independence. In 1776, she would have been about, she was born in, she was been about 9 at the time. So how old was she when all this was happening? She was living in Westfield. And when she was 9 years old, the British Army passed near Westfield in December, and all the livestock were moved to the mountains. Later in December, a British column actually passes through Westfield and attacks Springfield, a neighboring town. When I went to Westfield and looked at the mountains, the hills that were surrounding this little town, and I saw where the Willis's land was, I could just imagine that at 9 years old, she's probably helping her parents get the livestock out of there because they know the British are coming, and they know that British will slaughter and take their livestock. They're getting them up to the mountains to hide them. And I just made her, this little girl, come to life for me. So those are the kinds of things that I like to put in my notes. Another thing about Polly Perrine down here at the bottom, when I visited her grave, the headstone read, "A constant friend, a loving wife, prudent in all the cares of life, arrested early by the hand of death, in faith and hope resigned her breath. Her youngest child she wished to have, buried with her in this same grave. This she said in a low tone and with a sigh, God's will be done." And this is the epitaph on her grave. So it's very likely she died at childbirth. She died right after that child was born. And again, I sourced it. I have a source up there. And here are all the sources. 10 is a guide to the Colonial Cemetery of the Presbyterian Church. Marble tombstones have faded and worn, and it's really hard to read them in some cases. And this is 250 years old or more, 300 almost. So that I was really glad to find this guide, because when this first came out, someone had, let's see, I've got another one that's got it older. Anyway, someone was able to read the epitaph. I couldn't read that on the tombstone. So that was really, gave me some insights into Polly. Here's the graveyard. And here's the tombstone of her parents. Her father is here, it was broken. She's here. Her mother's here, and an infant son, brother is here. So those are the kind, of course, these pictures I'm putting on in my software with her, so that I have the pictures linked to her account. Okay, sources are so important, because if you want to go back and check on something, you want to know where you got that information. So your software will have ways you can just fill in the sources. You can put in, this is his tax index. Another alternative to the census is that many states kept track of the tax lists. So you can track them and see where they were living over each year as they compiled the tax records. So I put my sources in, and then down below you see the preview. Then they made it look a fairly decent bibliographic citation. So sources they add credibility to your research. They identify the source if your research is challenged. You can go back and compare your old research with your new research. You find something new and you said, well, I didn't find that 5 years ago, but you want to know where you found it. And you can evaluate your sources, and primary sources are always better than secondary, and some secondary are better than others. So sources are important, and software makes it really easy to put your sources keep them with your research. But then online trees just automatically attach a source to the online tree, and that is super easy. It's just a click of your computer. If sources interest you, this is a person to explore. She is the citation diva of genealogy, and she's written a book on it. And for those of you who have done a lot of citations, genealogists generally use the Chicago style for their traditional sources in the MLA. But I just use, unless I'm not writing a paper for a journal, I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm just using the template that the software has, and I plug it in, and it's enough for me to be able to find that source again. So I find that if I get kind of into the perfection of sources, then that takes away the fun of all of this. I don't want to be dragged down with the perfection. I want it just to be fun and at least have what I need. Okay, this funny thing called a GEDCOM, it's genealogical data communication. And it's a way to exchange data between your software, an online tree, and other applications. So your software or the online tree on Ancestry or Family Search or wherever can be converted into a GEDCOM, and that GEDCOM can be emailed or sent to someone, and then they can import it in their software. So for example, I have cousins that use Family Tree Maker. So if I want to share information with them, I put what's in my software. I can press a button on my software, make it into a GEDCOM, attach it to an email. They take it and then they import it into their Family Tree Maker, another software, and they have it. I don't like to import a GEDCOM into my tree. I always make another tree and then I check someone else's GEDCOM, but it's a really easy way to share information. Okay, so if you're thinking about a genealogy software, questions to ask yourself: is there a free trial? Are there free training materials? That's really important because there is a little bit of a learning curve here. Is the company growing or is it dead? Has it not put out anything new? Is it going to be around? Can your information be viewed on a smartphone and tablet? Can it sync with your devices? Can it produce a GEDCOM? Very important. It's got to produce a GEDCOM, but all of those that were on that list do. And is it available in the Mac or PC, depending on, some are available in both, some are only in one. So those are things to think about. Technical support is really important too. One reason why I do like Reunion is that Mark and I over at IT on Reunion have gotten to be friendly, and Mark responds to all my questions. Reunion also has a forum where you can ask other people, and it's really active, and I find that very helpful. Okay, so here's the big question. Are you a folders person or a binders person? Either's fine, either works. I'm both, actually. I have these folders where when I come home from a trip or been to a library or whatever, where I just quickly put my information in folders because I'm going to do something with it and I don't want it to get mixed up with everything else. So that's how I use my folders. But I am a binders person. I must say I'm a binders person. I just like to grab the binder and walk out the door if I'm getting together with my cousins. Folders, it's a little, I have to look for it and stuff. So my binders are a transition. I use them for transition. I mean, my folders are transition. My binders are what I store in. And so this is the way my binders look. And I organize my binders by dividers, by couples. I actually number them, and I'll just mention how to do that, but by couples. And so I have a divider sheet for each couple. And I keep in my binder the things that I want to keep that are really precious, like a marriage certificate or a death certificate or a letter, things that I'm not going to throw away. And I put them in our archival sheets that are PVC free, so they're acid free. And these are things that are really important to me that I want to save. Things that are digitized, I don't necessarily, like an Ancestry page. a document, I keep that on my computer. I don't need that in my binder. I have a section for surnames so that if I found something on the Green family that's all the Greens and I can't put it with a couple, I put it in the Green family. And I have a place, like maybe I picked up a pamphlet on one of my trips that has to do with the town where my ancestors lived, and I want to keep that pamphlet, then I will keep that in the places. I'll have a divider that will say Finnerusia, Sweden, or I'll have Detroit, Michigan, or wherever Westfield, New Jersey. I'll have a divider for all the things that are related. So I organize my binders by couples, by surnames, and places. And I go a step further, and you may think I'm over the top, and this may not be. Everybody's got their own system. But rather than putting the name of the couple, I actually give them a number, because I have a lot of John Greens. So if I have a divider with John Green, and then I have John Green again, and even though the wives are different, it's confusing to me. This way I know that number 3 is probably my parents, and number 4 is probably my grandparents, and whatever. And I have an index in the beginning of the the binder that tells me what numbers correlated with what couple. Okay, so I get the number from my software, and all software has this. I personally use a family ID number. So number 5 are my great grandparents. So anytime I've got something with number 5, I know that all my Daniel Mosher Monroe and Emma Sarah Green are under number 5. Once their kids are married and grow up, then they've moved on to another number because they've got their own family, and so forth. So that works for me, but you could just as well put the name of the couple on that dividing sheet, and then put those things you wanted to save, the marriage certificate, death certificate, passenger list, whatever, right after their names. So the binder contains, for me, primary source materials that are precious to me, loose photos that I haven't scanned, or the original beautiful old photos that I don't want to lose, letters that I may have, maps I may have, and things that I want to keep. And I could just as easily stick them in a folder, but binders work for me. Okay, so that's the loose physical things that I do not want to lose. Now, I also have computer files, and those would be the documents I downloaded that were on the internet, on one of the big 5, or I got them somewhere. And I have files for those. And I have those organized by genealogy, surnames, the big overall surname, the name of the person, the place, emails, and photos. Okay, I'll go into that a little bit more. I label my computer files by name, document, date, and location. Basically, it's who, what, when, where. That's how I remember who, what, when, where. So when I download a marriage certificate from Ancestry, and I want to keep it because it's got all kinds of information, I immediately put the names of the people who are about this document's about. That would be the husband and wife. I say that it's a marriage certificate, I date it, and I show where they were married. Now, the wonderful way computers work, that if I'm looking for that document and I can't find it, I can put in their name, and my computer will pull it up, or pull up all the documents about that person. But I actually do that, the hierarchical. I have the Nielsen family here. These are the different family names. I have Herman. I distinguish Herman from another Herman who is his son underneath. You'll see Herman Meinhardt by the years, so I know that it's the father. And then I do the document. I have his name, I have his death, I have the year, and I have where. So that's how I do my computer files. And whatever system works for you works. But that's the way I keep them straight. But I also have files about places. Now here's my Westfield, Polly Perrine's town. So I keep computer files on information about the places. So here's United States, New Jersey, and in New Jersey, I have Essex County, which is where Westfield is. And Elizabethtown is another town, Westfield. And then I have the things that I have about Westfield. I have a map of Westfield. I have the Presbyterian Cemetery. I've got the Miller Quarry House, which is a historical house. So I can find, if I want to know about Westfield, I've got all the computer files there. Now, emails. I mentioned that last week because emails have information and you may have used that as a source, and I don't want to lose those emails. So I move them out of my email program into my computer genealogy file, and I have them by family so that I can find that email if I need it. I don't want to lose it if someone's written me with all kinds of information. I want it. So I do my emails. Okay. And photos, well, that's, a challenge we all have. And I do that in the same way by family group in computer files. But okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Paper files, paper photos, we all have those to deal with. And that's my COVID project. Not my old ones. I'm very good on my old photos, but my current photos, less the ones when the kids were growing up. I'm in the process of organizing them by year. I'm going through one box at a time, and I'm deciding whether to digitize or put in an album. And this is my project. This is my COVID project. These are the photos that, we got in the yellow envelopes when the kids were growing up, and we looked at them and loved them and laughed at them, and then threw them into a cardboard box and did nothing. I did nothing with them. So now it's coming to haunt me. And having been experienced the fire and having to evacuate, I realized, oh my goodness, I've got to get my act together on this. So I've been putting them in order, and I've been deciding what to scan, and I've been tossing. So that's been my project. I'm keeping one copy of each image. I'm asking myself how many photos I need of a vacation or an event. I'm selecting the important ones, and I'm getting rid of the others. And I'm getting rid of the blurry over and underexposed pictures, and I'm scanning the ones I want to keep. So that's been my COVID project for the last 6 months. Once I've digitizing them, I'm labeling by again, who, what, when, where. It's easy for me to remember the things I want to put on as I label them. The name of the people in the picture, what the event was, what the date was, and the location. And if there's metadata, and that by I mean source, did I get it from someone? Was a photo taken by someone? When was the photo taken? I put that in too if I know that information. And then I organize them in computer folders. Okay, some of you have came to the class I taught on this, and it's complex, but I have a Mac and I use Photos, but Google Photos is a good place to go. And there are other programs. And if this is something that you're thinking about and wondering, feel free to email me and I will share with you some tips, because there are some software that are photo organizers, which really can help you. Having a Mac, it's really easy to use Photos. I have the folders for all my ancestors, and I have their photos in there. And then I use this as a basis for my software. I move the thumbnail, the photo stays in Photos, move the thumbnail over to my software. So I have my slideshows, but this is where I put my photos. And this is my grandfather, his photos, my grandmother. And I also, because I do who, what, when, where, photos that were taken of Escalon, I just type in Escalon and all my Escalon photos come up using Photos on my Mac. So if you can find a software that will help you tag your photos, and then you can pull them up when you want them. So you want all the photos from 1942. You put in 1942 and all your June 1942, all your photos come up. It's so easy. And it's just, you have to just start. You just take one step at a time. Okay, so that's Photos. Now, We talked about the bright, shiny objects, those things that you get, the rabbit holes that we go down. And, we're looking for something, we've got our goal, and then we find something that looks really interesting and we go off on the tangent. And that's really fun. And that's what this is all about. But I found a way that helps me keep those tangents so I can go back to them. And this is a software called Evernote. I'd love to see hands who's used Evernote, but this has just been a lifesaver for me. Evernote is a software that's on your computer, which has apps on your tablet and your phone. And it's a software that helps you take notes, organize, make task lists, and archive things. And these notes that you keep are sorted in notebooks, tagged, annotated, and edited. Now, they're the kinds of things that you put with Scotch tape on your computer to do, or you have a notebook of to-dos, or you have the shopping list on your refrigerator door, or the different things that we try to keep track of. Evernote helps you keep track of these things. So it's not just genealogy, it's your life. The good things, it's free. The first level, I did for several years, I just did the free one. And then I started using so much, I did go to the first level. It syncs with your devices. It's a web clipper. So if you see something online, a website that you don't want to lose, you can use a Chrome extension and clip that website and put it into Evernote, and you can go back to it. Actually, you clip on it out of Evernote, it takes you right back to the internet, to that website you clipped. You can search by notebooks, which would be like folders, or tag things. And it's got actually the next level of payment has optical character recognition. That's one reason why I went to the next level. That's where they pick up words in a document. So I have a website I've clipped. I know that there's a word on enumeration districts in the census. I put that in and it will pull up all of the Evernote clippings I did that mention enumeration district for the census. So I use this to organize all parts of my life, from recipes, from trip planning, to Christmas gifts, to gardening projects, to everything. But it is really great for genealogy. And let me show you how it works. So I'm preparing for my North Dakota trip, and I clip something on Trail County where I'm going. This is a website. I put it into Evernote and I put it into my folder, North Dakota, and forget about it. I clip on the cemetery in North Dakota, put it in the folder, forget about it. I'm writing my book on my Swedish immigrants, clip it, forget about it. Buxton is a town in North Dakota, clip it. A book that I see that's about Peachtree. My family worked with Miller and Lux, which was a big agricultural farming group in San Benito County. Saw this, thought this looked great. I'm going to do this through Interlibrary Learn, clip it, put it into Evernote. Again, more Miller and Lux records in the Online Archive of California. Clip it, put it into Evernote. Correspondence that I want to keep track of from genealogy, clip it, put it into Evernote. Evernote is amazing. And if you, rather than losing that piece of paper on your desk, it's an Evernote, and I can search for it by the OCR, the optical character recognition, or I can search for it by the tagging that I've done, or I can search for it by the folder. So the bright, shiny objects, the things that you find at 1 o'clock in the morning that take you in another direction from what you're looking for, can be clipped and put in Evernote under that ancestor's name, so that you can get back to them another time, but not lose it. It is the greatest thing. So I really recommend Evernote if you're looking for some way to organize your genealogy. And this, Carrie Scott wrote a really great book about steps, how to set it up. Okay, what's your organizational plan of attack? Okay, well, these are things to think about. You don't have to make any decisions now, but whether you want to actually go and invest in a genealogy software and invest in the time to learn it, or whether you want to stick with an online tree. And online trees are perfectly fine, and they're fun, and they are easy, and you've got it there. And down the road, you might want to look at a software. Decide if you're going to go for binders or folders or both, but that's a good way to organize. Decide how you're going to set up your computer files. And again, I used the surname, genealogy surname, and the various people, and then I put the file in there. Decide what you're going to do with your photos, because that's so much a part of this whole thing. It gives us so many insights into our family, into the stories of our family. And check out Evernote if that interests you. So back up your research, because if you're doing research and you've got your computer, make sure you back up. I'm over the top on this. I have a hard drive sitting right next to my computer. I have a hard drive in a safe deposit box. I have stuff in Dropbox. I have stuff in cloud storage, and I know what's in each of these. And I have a web-based backup service that is constantly backing up on my computer. And you ask, why am I over the top on this? Well, I was in the Oakland Hills fire. The fire came 1 block from my house. I was robbed, and I've been in 3 fires out here in Carmel Valley, the Sobranis, the Big Basin, the latest, the Carmel fire, and we were evacuated. I know that if I walk out of the house with my computer, or if I can't get, if I'm gone and there's something happens, it's all backed up somewhere. I'm not going to lose my research. So if you haven't done it, I really recommend that you take some precaution. Don't leave the hard drive next to the computer, because we were robbed. They took the computer and the hard drive. So that's not the solution. It's great when when you've got some technical problems and you've got your backup, but it's not enough. It needs to be out of the house. It needs to be in your children or a friend's house. So that's just my advice. Backblaze is the web-based backup service I use. It's constantly backing up, and it's really reasonable for the year. When we were robbed, our son had given us this as a Christmas present. So my husband, who is a photographer, did not lose all of his photos. They were all on Backblaze. So I just think about that as something that you want to do. Okay, this week, don't get overwhelmed. I know I've given you a lot of stuff here. Just take one of these. Just think about one of these things that we talked about. Set your goals small. And look at the family trees and see that as a possible way to start. And do you want to actually set up your online family tree? It's easy to do, and it's all there. Look at software if you're at the next stage and you want to think about that. Begin with one small part. Set up a system for your paper documents. That might be a good place to start. Or kind of think about how you want to digitize your documents on your computer and how you want to label your photos. And remember, anything you do now is gotta be better than this. So this week, your assignment is to think about how you might organize in one small way the research that you've already begun to do. Here's Organizing Your Genealogy, Drew Smith. I'll have this all in the handout. That is this is a book that just came out last year, and it's a really simple book to do. And next week, we'll do DNA, test options, and this is going to be filled with lots of stuff. DNA companies, interpreting your results, we'll do a little bit with that. How you can use DNA to connect with cousins, and what's the future of DNA? Where are we going with it? I also wanted to invite you to a group that has met at the Family History Center, but we're on Zoom right now, and we are the storytellers. So we take the research that we've done and put the stories of our ancestors together, and we meet once a month, and we'll be meeting next Wednesday. So I wanted to invite any of you that might be interested in this to join us. And finally, please email me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Birth parents, adoptive parents, both, like how are they actually listed on the family tree?
Okay, that's a really good question because I have that issue as well. On your software, it's easy. You can have the birth parents and the adoptive parents. So there's a place for both sets of parents. For my daughter, I actually have her birth family tree separate from her adoptive family tree. So I have kept them separate. You can decide on your online tree how you want to deal with this, whether you want, probably the best way is just to have two trees, unless you don't want to explore the adoption part. But in your online tree, you can't really have both of them together. You can do that with your software. You can have both parents, two sets of parents. But I personally have kept the two trees separate.
And then in terms of resources, the card catalog, you had talked about that last week, and there were some questions again about how to really utilize that tool. I know that you really love the card catalog.
Yes, the card catalog gives you a way of looking at a subject and accessing it through the subject as opposed to the person. So when you do a search for the person, you find all of the documents that have that name in it that have been indexed. But often there are documents or databases that have not been indexed. And you can get that access to that through the card catalog. So let me give you an example. I'm looking for the marriage record of two ancestors, and I look up the male ancestor, and there's no marriage record at all. But I know that that couple was married in New Jersey. If I go into the card catalog and look at marriages New Jersey, I see that there is a list of all of the marriages that were performed during the years that I'm looking for in New Jersey, but they haven't been indexed. So I go into that part, that book, that document in Ancestry, and I start to scroll through looking for marriages in 1787, knowing that's when they perhaps were married, and I find their name. But I could not find them when I searched based only on the name. I had to go into the subject. I hope that helps a bit. That was my Samuel Morse example, going in, looking at Morse code, or going into the subject in a backdoor way. But the reason why that's very helpful with the big four is that not everything is indexed. So sometimes you have to go searching in the document yourself and do, in a sense, the indexing yourself.
And then in terms of software, you've mentioned a number of different softwares. Is there a universal thread? I mean, people are entering their information on each kind of software, but is there anything that feeds the other, if you will? Like a more of a passport kind of situation, or do you enter all your information every time you choose a different software?
Each software has a template that you just fill in the information, and all of the software has the same elements. They just have it in a different format. So there is a universal expectation of what each software will have. So it may be in a different interface, but it is the same information.
Okay, so you re-enter every time. Okay.
Yes.
There's a question about just encountering problems using a Mac versus a PC. It's specifically on Reunion.
Oh, Reunion would be only Mac. Yeah.
Only Mac.
So,
Okay.
so if you don't, Roots Magic, some have both. Family Tree Maker and Roots Magic both have both. So you just have to decide what works. And I would look at some of the interfaces and see what you think. And that's where conferences really come in handy. You can go to the vendor table and actually try things out. Anyway, it's something to think about for the future if you don't have a software yet.
Do most of these online sites allow you to print out documents?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And to download them. They all do.
Great. And then you mentioned scanning documents. Do you have a favorite that you use or recommendation?
Purchased, it's Epson 600V. Um, I, and I just purchased it with this new project of mine, and I love it. So the Epson 600V. So I would recommend that you look into that. Find the Grave is an organization that goes and takes pictures of gravestones. So you can actually look up your ancestor and see pictures of the cemetery and the graveyard, and also will list maybe the children or the parents. So it is definitely a source of information. Ancestry has purchased it, I believe, and incorporated it, but they've agreed to keep it free, so you can access it free. It's not behind the paywall of Ancestry. So good question. If you find a mistake, I'll look that up.
Mary had written a little note about markers, that she noticed the markers. So speaking of gravestones, were a similar style. And she just asked about the old cemeteries, if that was common practice for families to have a similar style marker.
I think so. They wanted to identify their family unit. And also, I really haven't researched this, but I know that there are styles that are indicative of different time periods: the Victorian, the marble, the mausoleum. And I think that would be really interesting to just sort of follow the architectural styles of cemeteries over time. But yes, families did try, and I maybe you all have thought about that too, keeping the theme or the style of the monument in family situations that you've had.
If somebody has a paid subscription currently on Ancestry and it expires, and they want to use a free subscription through the library, do things still translate? Are you still able to access?
Oh, good question. No, the library edition is strictly documents. So any family trees are not in the library edition. Your own personal ones are others. And DNA results are not. Anything that's personal and connecting with other people is not on the library edition. I'm hoping that you will have some more discoveries this next week, and I would love to hear what you have discovered. And some of you shared at the beginning when we were just getting on. I'm also interested in whether or not any of you will be setting up an online tree. So let me know how that goes and if you are exploring the software. So just baby steps, but those of you that are just beginning this process, it's easier for you now to start setting up an organizational plan. It's harder for those of us who have been in it for a while because we're sort of already got a plan. So start now and take baby steps.